Greetings, everyone, and welcome to this webinar, Navigating International Communication in Scholarly Publishing, organized by the ISMTE Research Triangle Park Local Group in collaboration with the ISMTE headquarters. We're all so excited to have everyone here with us. I'll now pass it over to your moderator for this webinar, Sarah Forging, Associate Managing Editor of the Journal of Investigative Dermatology. Sarah, take it away.
And I'd like to add that our speakers have been kind enough to share their personal experiences with us, so they're not necessarily speaking for their journal or their country, but from their own experience. And I'm excited to get started. I'd also like to thank them for being here because the time difference, it's a little bit challenging. I know it's after midnight in Japan right now, so thank you all for making it. And let's go ahead and get started. We'll start with Anita Judd. Anita, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do in scholarly publishing?
Hi, I'm Anita Judd, and I've provided a freelance service for about the last 14 years for mainly like managing peer review process on a number of journals, communications, proofreading, social media and website services.
Great, and where have you lived?
So mostly in the UK, in the south of England and Mid-East, but also in Europe, in Spain for about 12 months.
Great. Let's introduce our other speakers. Noriaki Horiuchi.
Hi. Yep. Hello, everyone. I'm Noriaki Horiuchi and working at Tokyo as an editor of Nature Photonics. And my role is, first one is evaluation manuscript, whether it was sending out to external referee or not. And second one is assignment of external referees. And the last one is making a decision based on the referee report, whether we publish or reject paper. And occasionally I visit some laboratories to learn what's going on in the field and give a talk on how to get published a paper in Nature research journals.
And where all have you lived? Because you've been a few places as well.
Well, yes, I was born and live in Tokyo. But when I was a student at university, I was in USA for 3 months to learn English. And I was in France for 5 years to get PhD.
Great. And then our last speaker is Thina Hedbom. Thina, can you tell us kind of what you do and what?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm from Sweden. I live in Stockholm and I work for the Journal of Internal Medicine, which is located by the Karolinska Institute in Stockholm. I've been working with this journal for more than 20 years. I enjoy it very much, and ISMTE has been very important in my career also. I live out north of Stockholm with my husband. We have 2 grown sons, and we had our first grandchild on Christmas Eve.
Congratulations. And where all have you lived? Because you haven't just...
Yeah, well, Sweden, and I did a year in the US, 1977-78, in Plainview, Minnesota, not too far from Rochester, where the Mayo Clinic is located. But I was not too much aware of that then, but now I am, of course.
Great. Well, while I've got you talking, can you tell me a word that you would collectively use to describe your colleagues from your part of the world, and then maybe a word to describe Americans or another international group? That's a lot. That's loaded.
Yeah, well, I would say Swedish people, maybe I would characterize as serious and professional. And when I think of maybe Americans, I would say social and professional, like maybe more open than we are.
Great. And I'll ask Anita the same question. Can you describe maybe how you view your colleagues in the UK and how you view your colleagues in the US and other international colleagues, perhaps?
I'd say, I mean, the same as Thina, that I think both, you know, the UK and the States are both very professional, but I think the UK, particularly the English, are very formal. In a professional capacity, they can tend to be quite formal. I think Americans come across more relaxed and warm.
Great. And Noriaki, same question for you.
Well, in a word, Japanese people are passive, and I'd say most of my colleagues are bounded by companies or unspoken social rule. When the issue of COVID-19 got serious, February 2020, in Japan, they continued to work as usual until company said, don't come to company and work from home. I guess they were scared of infection in a busy train, but they are scared to break a rule more than being infected. So you can say it is a negative aspect of monoculture, but if you take it positively, public system works as usual, even in a difficult situation like now. And as for American-born colleagues, well, it's a difficult question because there's not so many American colleagues in my company, but in general, well, they're very friendly. And even when I was very depressed by heavy appeal from scientists, and they kindly talk to me at kitchen and coffee and comfort me. And one word for my international colleague, well, I'd say they're flexible. My company is international, so I believe my international colleagues don't have any problem in working in Japan, but outside of company, I'm sure they have difficulties in Japanese language, but they manage to do and understand or speak Japanese. So I think they are great.
Great. And so when you're working with people internationally, does anyone do anything that seems odd to you that we just don't know that we're doing?
Well, just me?
Yeah. You or Thina or anyone who wants to take this one.
I can say my colleague, she mentioned that Americans go use their outdoor shoes indoors, which could be odd. And then what I was thinking of is that Americans eat only with a fork, not with fork and knife, which is kind of odd. In Europe, I mean, you eat usually with fork and knife. And Americans also bring their drink with their meal. Like if they have gin and tonic, they eat that. They have that with a meal, which is kind of odd too. And maybe drink beer from a bottle instead of a glass.
And if we were at a formal meeting, like, you know, for work or something, is there something that would be like, oh no, they have terrible manners if we did something like that?
It's not terrible. It's just different manners, I would guess.
I think for me, and this is going back a long time ago, like 20 years or more, my first, I guess, experience of when I traveled to the US it was on a medical conference, and being quite young and a usual sort of stiff Brit, very, very formal, to have this warm, somebody coming across to me that's quite warm and friendly and outwardly enthusiastic, that really we're just not that way on initial meetings, and I found that really lovely. But for some Brits, I guess it might be quite overwhelming. So it took me a little while to get used to that, but I do like it personally because I'm that way. But a lot of Brits can be quite, reserved, conservative. And maybe might find that overwhelming to begin with. I'm not saying all Americans are like that or all British.
Well, I think there's nothing odd at work, but I'd say, well, as Thina said, the eating manner is different. And America holds a fork at her right hand and put her left hand on the lap, while Japanese supports the plate with left hand. But I know it's a matter of custom, so I followed American custom when I was there. And as for my international colleague, I don't see any odds so far. Maybe there is, but I don't notice it.
That's cool. The Americans are a little bit odder. That's fine. We intentionally do stuff differently from the British going way back. And that's why we do our forks in different hands, is actually because the British do it that way, so we don't. So it's an interesting history. Anita, is there anything that we should know as far as working with people from UK that would maybe make it easier for us to?
Yeah, well, I think one difference is we do work extremely long hours. We can do, and even though our set hours should be quite short, they often aren't. And I think we tend to condense meetings quite a lot. So we'll perhaps have lots and lots of meetings in a day, but we'll compact everything into 15 minutes where you could take an hour and be more friendly. We'll kind of condense things. And I don't know if I notice that that's a huge difference between our countries, but I know that I can race from meeting to meeting and we do something very quick and perhaps aren't so friendly during that time. But I think with time, we do open up and become more friendly. So probably be patient with us and we will get there. But yeah, we do sometimes have situations where we're trying to fit so many things into a day that we can come across as unfriendly maybe sometimes, or not so warm, and want to rush in and out of a meeting sometimes, if that makes sense.
It does. Thina, do you have anything that perhaps we could be doing differently in our working with folks from Sweden?
Yeah, well, I'd like to speak a little bit about language. Because, well, in my country, we learn English from about first grade, like 7, and then we have English all around, subtitles on TV, and you hear English all around, but it's still the second language. And we also learn other languages like French or German or Italian or whatever. So I was an exchange student, as I said, in 77, and there was a welcome party for me at the house where I stayed, and some kids from high school came, and one girl came up to me and she said, so you guys, you speak Swedish over there? Yeah. And she said, wasn't it hard to learn? And I think about that sometimes, that maybe we are, English is the common language here on scholarly publishing and everything, but it's still maybe not our native language. So I think it's important that maybe the people who have English as their native language are patient with us that don't have it. Maybe we pronounce words differently, and it's actually, I think, out of 6 billion people in the world, it's like 500 million having English as their native language. So it could be something to think about. We try, but it's still sometimes we need more time, and maybe we pronounce differently, but it's still, we can communicate. So.
And when we're communicating with you as native English speakers, are there things that we can be doing? Should we be talking slower and louder, which I understand Americans do a lot when they go abroad, or,
yeah, Americans talk very loud. Yes. No, I think
too.
No, it's more maybe when that you give us time to maybe a little more time to talk. I think that we usually understand very well, but then maybe if we are, want to express something, it could sound a little different.
Okay. Anita, we had a question come in for you about whether the meetings crammed into one day is more of a UK thing, or if that's the institutions you've worked with specifically. Could you elaborate on that?
I have worked at places outside of publishing, to be honest, and I do feel that that is the case. I can't speak for the whole of the UK, but certainly in England, and I would guess that it's pretty much the same in big cities, particularly where there's a lot of pressure on us to get so much done in a day. And I think, yeah, even outside of publishing, I've experienced that a lot. And it's a quick hi, right? What do we need to achieve? Okay, let's get it done. Right, see you tomorrow, or something like that. And it's not as warm as some meetings I've been to with US people.
Thanks, Anita. Going back to Noriaki, again, are there things that we can be doing as Americans or as international colleagues that can make it easier for us to work with you and easier to communicate?
Well, for Asian people, well, we are very far from America, so it was quite difficult to learn. But nowadays, thanks to internet, we can learn or chat via easily. So, well, to a certain extent, we can learn by ourselves, but for like an eating manner, we don't understand real American culture. So in that case, we have to go America directly.
Okay, and is there anything we can be doing when we're communicating with folks from Japan that might make it more easy? You know, again, allowing time, like Thina said, for people to formulate responses. Anything like that, or anything that we do that's not polite that we shouldn't be doing?
Sorry, Sarah, was that to all of us, or?
Yeah, if anyone has something.
Sorry. Something else I just wanted to add, though, as well, about the situation with the differences there. And I think with Thina saying about language, for a small country, the UK and even England has such diverse pronunciations, accents, and I know we can speak very fast sometimes, and I, even in England, can't understand people from the north of England and I live in the south, or vice versa. And because we speak fast, I don't think we're offended at all if you say to us, can you slow down a little, because I understand that our accents can be very strong depending on the area. So I guess that's the same for most countries, but I know we can speak fast too.
And I, as a native English speaker, speaking with native English speakers in England, I've had that same trouble, especially on phone and video calls. In person, it's not so bad. But over the phone, I can definitely see that being challenging.
Yeah.
We have a question for Noriaki from the group. And that's, how do we figure out first name and last name accuracy?
Well, for Japanese name, well, basically the first noun is last name, and second name is family name. Well, I'd say it's Western style, but in Japanese style, it's different way. So my family name comes first and my last name comes last. So it's totally different.
Okay. Are there any personal or professional practices that you see Americans doing that are not necessarily appropriate for your culture? This is for Noriaki or the group, if there's anything that you see your international colleagues doing that maybe is not quite as appropriate in your culture.
I think, again, going back to in the UK, we're extremely polite, overly polite sometimes, too many please and thank yous. It takes us so long to say something with all of that added in that I don't think it's inappropriate of people in the US or internationally, but I guess compared to us, we might find that if I've experienced this in other places in Europe, in Spain, for instance, that the Spanish don't say please and thank you as much. I used to think, oh, they're being a bit rude to someone because they've not said those words, but they're not. It's just usual. It's just us that's odd. So I suppose that I sometimes think, or people being a little bit rude, that they're not. It's just that we're different, maybe. So maybe that's something to consider, that we do love please and thank yous.
We have a question for the group for Noriaki.
I was thinking of something. Okay.
Go ahead, Thina.
Oh no, I was thinking of maybe adding to what Anita said before, that maybe Swedes, we do not have the immediate spontaneous openness that I can feel Americans have sometimes. We are a bit hesitant, but that doesn't mean that we're, we don't want to make contact. It takes a little time to get to know us, but then you have often friend for life.
This is the same for us too. Yeah. Takes a little time to warm up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So we got a question from
maybe it's a,
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, I keep interrupting.
No. So no. Maybe it's that Americans often are very open and smiling and social. More, they're trained from from the start, I guess.
So that ties nicely into the question from the group. Somebody has been to business dinners in Asia that have ended up with people going out and singing and being much more extroverted than they're comfortable with. And is there a polite way for an introvert maybe to excuse themselves from the more extroverted activities? This question was for Noriaki, but if anyone else has an opinion as well, when you're dealing with somebody who's very internal to themselves and somebody who's very loud and out there, how that dynamic works.
So I can say from a Brit's point of view, I think we're just open to people saying. So, if you've been invited along to something as a group over here and it's not your thing, totally would not be offended, just to be honest. I think we appreciate honesty and just, excuse yourself, that's fine.
Thanks, Anita. Noriaki, if somebody wanted to step back from an activity that a group was doing, how would they do it in Japan?
Say again?
If somebody did not want to participate in an activity that a group was doing, how would you excuse yourself in Japan?
Well, officially, I'm sorry, I'm busy with working or something. Well, or if we can decline to my friends, well, we can say, well, I'm sorry, I'm very tired of working, or I have another date with somebody else, so I can join. Well, we can say frankly.
Great. And then another question we have for the group is, has COVID affected the way you conduct your meetings? I'm guessing yes is the answer, but I'd love to hear how you guys have adapted.
Yeah, we've learned how to use Teams and how to use Zoom and all these other platforms. Also, my journal, we support scientific meetings usually, like conferences and so on. And now last year we didn't have any meeting at all, and then they're all like pushed forward to this year. And most of them will be virtual meetings. And I mean, I don't think I knew what a virtual meeting was last year, so, or more than a year ago, really. So we've learned a lot, and everyone learns. I can just tell you that I spoke with my 87-year-old mother this morning, and she was going to have a Zoom meeting with a relative in the US this afternoon, and I just gave them some support to what to buttons to press and so on. So everyone is using the meetings, the video meetings.
And I think for myself, I mean, I worked freelance since 2007 for a company in London, in England, whilst based in Europe, in Spain. And I think I returned to England a couple of times during that time. So we did everything virtually then. So I'd say since 2007, I've done a lot of meetings virtually anyway. It's been ramped up this last year, definitely. I think the technology has moved on so much. You know, there's so many options now, isn't there, with Zoom, Teams, chats. You miss face-to-face, but I don't think there's anything that's suffered because of it.
And in addition to meetings, how has work life just in general in your country changed? And do you see any of those changes becoming more permanent?
I think for myself and some of my colleagues I work with in London and around England, a lot of offices have closed permanently now, and people will be based at home permanently because companies have found that there hasn't really been any difference, nothing negative towards their business. So saving money, I guess. You know, businesses have lost money in the last year, and I guess for them saving money, not having those business premises, and a lot of people, I mean, I know one company, a publisher, they've closed their entire office and are sharing a small area in somebody else's office so that people can hot desk and go in once a week or when needed for meetings. So they've just found that's the way that they'll go. And I have heard other companies doing that same thing to save some money, I guess.
Thina or Noriaki, have things changed where you are?
Oh, I think it's the same as in the UK and all over, that right now people have to work from home if they can. And it's sad to see all the businesses that have been, you know, closing down, and culture activities and sports activities and everything. So it's, I mean, it affects my free time. Of course, if I want to go to the swimming hall or, you know, do something, or the gym, or these places are usually closed or it's limited. So it affects both your work life and your free time.
Well, my case is very special because my company is international. So my company already introduced GoToMeeting and Zoom system. So I can communicate with my international colleagues for every week. But at normal Japanese companies, they didn't introduce such system. So at the beginning, well, they stay at home, and nowadays, well, they start commuting to their companies. So situation doesn't change.
Thank you. So I've had a question come in for people who work with people as direct reports from another country. And do any of you have advice to dealing with colleagues specifically in your own company that might be from a different country?
So I do have that situation. So I work for a couple of places where, yeah, people are based in different countries, and that's been that situation from the beginning. And personally, I don't think it's been affected at all. It would be lovely to meet up face to face sometimes, and that's happened a couple of times in about 6 years. But you know, we talk on Zoom. I think one thing that I have used with other companies more, and perhaps when people are in totally different time zones, is I do find Teams is really helpful for the chat function, so that rather than, I always feel like emails are quite formal and they're totally work-based generally, Teams is an opportunity to have a private chat with someone, just to say, hi, how are you doing? Did you have a good weekend? You know, and to also chat about work, but kind of a more friendly environment that you can not have to send a full email. So I think Teams is quite useful, and then people can pick that up, you know, 5 hours later when they're up, and then when the other person's gone to bed, you can still have a kind of, it doesn't feel so disjointed on there.
And when you're dealing with a supervisor who's, you know, giving you feedback, what's the easiest or most convenient or comfortable way to discuss, you know, your performance with a supervisor or somebody who works for you even?
I've always found, yeah, video calls and possibly start off with an email. That's my preferred option, actually, is just try and discuss it by email, and then a video call to follow up, just to iron out anything else. But that's never been a problem. And I'm guessing, Noriaki, you have the same problem because you're internationally, aren't you? So
yeah, I agree. So basically, we use mail as a communication tool, but if we have an emergency or very difficult situation, we directly communicate via Zoom or Skype.
Yeah. It's the same for me. We just a couple of weeks ago we needed to communicate with our production editor about some issues, and it was the first time actually we had a Teams call. It was with she was in India, then her supervisor was in Singapore, our contact with the publisher was in Copenhagen, and well, we were in Stockholm, so it was really international, but it works very well. And when you can see someone, it's really the best thing, I think.
Quite a few people have actually asked about the actual wording in emails, and whether being overly formal or overly polite comes across as being kind of brusque even. You know, some people will respond very to the point. Some people will go on and with pleasantries and say, hi, how are you? And sort of within your culture, what's appropriate? Is it too familiar to say, stay safe, hope you're well, or is that considered polite?
I think it depends on how much contact you've had with the person. But I try to be a bit personal after, you know, if there are several contacts. And also I noticed that I wasn't sure in the beginning if I just said, you know, dear professor so-and-so in each email. But if the person responded, well, best regards, Bob. And then I just could reply, dear Bob, although he was this professor. So I just, by doing.
It can be a very redundant expression, but to communicate, to contact with scientists, well, I often put the general sentence like, nice to meeting you, or I hope you're doing well, or etc. I think it's very, well, essential sentence or style.
Is there something someone could say that's too familiar?
I don't think so. Well, well, in terms of business, well, I think, well, it's normal, but we often contact with unknown, unacquainted scientists. So we often use this very awkward or greeting style.
Anita, you're muted.
sorry. I think I've noticed over the last year a lot of people have stay safe and well at the on their signature block, and I do think that was a really lovely thing over the last year. Just even if you know it's automatic, just that you feel someone's saying that to you. I think the places that I've worked, publishers, definitely medical societies in the UK, we do tend to address people, authors, reviewers, dear professor, dear doctor. Even if they come back with first names, we still seem to stick to our formal greeting. With regard to like lowly people like myself, first names, that's fine. But yeah, I would say generally we do remain quite formal with that kind of thing. And I guess a bit like Thina, after a few communications, we get more relaxed and there might be a bit of personal chatter. But yeah, generally first 2 or 3 emails might be quite formal.
Would it be a little bit offensive if somebody said, "Hi, Anita," in their first email to you?
No, and actually, I was going to mention that because hi is a very, very overused term with English people, I think. We use it all the time, you know, rather than, I would say 3 emails in, we would just automatically do that. We would use I rather than hi, sorry, rather than dear. And use it, you know, for the first one sometimes. So we use hi a lot, yeah.
And if this is for the group too, if you were to receive a message that didn't even say hi, it just said, you know, "This is what I want," and the person signed it, how would you react to that?
Yeah,
Sounds a bit rude.
It's always rude, but
I feel friendly.
Not so good for us. We did have this situation with a colleague at one of the publishers I worked in, and they were pulled up about this because we like to, even if we're replying to a conversation, if it's somebody that's a professional rather than someone in your team, we would still always put "Hi, Professor Craig," or "Dear Dr. Craig." We would never still start it off blank like that at the top. We'd still always address someone. So, and they were pulled up about that actually, that you mustn't do that. You mustn't just start a sentence like that. So I don't know, maybe it's a British thing.
And
Well,
related to that, people have also asked about specifically phrasing your rejection letters since you're delivering bad news. Are there certain ways that we can get that message across that's not as offensive?
I don't think the use of rejected is great for people. You know, another term I know in the journal I work for, we don't tend to use that. You know, it might be you've not been successful this time or something like that. But I know that the paper
priority.
Yeah,
not enough priority.
Exactly. I know the paper has been rejected, but it's kind of like that's years and years of work, and to just say your paper's been rejected.
But our rejection letters, they start with like decision reject, and then there is so the decision is in the top. So they know from start. Yeah.
But when we write a rejection letter, we take care that the value of the research is not damaged. We just say the scientific content didn't fulfill with our criteria. So your paper will be published elsewhere. So just at the same time, we encourage scientists.
That's nice, yeah.
Are there any more questions from the group, or do any of our speakers have anything else that they would like to express to the audience?
I was thinking of something maybe with Americans and Swedes, and it could be that like when you if an American is successful and has maybe made a lot of money or made an innovation or something, well, he or she tells like I'm so proud I did this, and he's cheered by his friends and everything. And if a Swedish person would say that, then people would go, well, okay, no, not being that. Now I'm maybe showing this in the hard way, but what I'm saying is that we might be a bit, you know, we don't want to talk about what we've achieved and if we are have had a success, because it's not really liked. So I think that's a big difference between Americans and maybe how the culture would be in our country, that to be successful is
it's good to be successful, but modest about it in Sweden. Is that?
Yeah.
I think there is a similar thing in the UK too, where we're maybe traditionally not so much, maybe my generation and a little bit below, but we were always brought up that it was vulgar to talk about money or, you know, share those sorts of things with people that you didn't know so well. So I guess we are similar in that way, but I think things have changed with younger generations. I don't think that's the case so much now. And I think a couple of other things I wanted to mention was the time zone thing. So that's, I think, something Europeans get, our minds are blown by the size of your country, I think, and the fact that you have all these different time zones in one country. And I guess that for us, if you say, you know, you're ringing from the US and we want to call you back and we don't know exactly where you are, that's quite difficult for us to understand because of the time zones. And I think with the clock change just now with Eastern times, so where I work, obviously, they've just changed their clocks for Eastern, move them forward. We're still not in that area yet. We've got another week to go before we move our clocks forward. So not only have we got the time zone thing, but there's a period of 2 weeks where there's a difference even more. So I guess it's that awareness of all those changes around the world generally. And at the moment, I think with COVID, with people working at home more, I don't know if this is the case in other countries, but certainly in the UK, we're probably being a bit more flexible with our time. So even if you think that we're only working 9 to 5 or 8 to 5, you could just check, because, you know, some of us might be working early morning, taking some of the day off in the middle and working in the evening because of homeschooling and all sorts of things. So you might find that we're more available at the moment because of working from home.
Would it be considered rude to expect you to be working at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m.?
I guess, yeah, I mean, it might feel a bit pressured to expect it, but I honestly think it's worth checking with people. You know, if you want to set up a meeting, you think, oh, they're not going to be available after 6 p.m. It might be worth just checking and saying, you know, what are your hours of work generally? Can we contact you later? I have a lot of friends in the UK that homeschooled in the afternoons and worked in the evenings. So you might just find that they're more available at the moment.
Okay, we got a couple of more questions from the group. One of them is, how important is the promotion of papers on social media viewed in other countries? And I would also add to that, what is an appropriate use of social media in your country? Is it formal? Is it for personal use or professional use? Anita, I know you do a lot of this.
Yeah, so for us, I would say generally we keep our, particularly Facebook is a social thing for us, not so much work-based, and Twitter, both. We might be a bit put off by somebody professionally trying to make contact with us on social media, because we tend to keep that more as a friendly thing. There will be people that will be fine with that. We use all platforms, to be fair. I think we're quite advanced generally across all our age groups, and I would say with papers and things, definitely Twitter is a great platform for promoting scientific content. And I know we do this on one of my journals, and it's where everybody's looking, where everybody's tracking things these days. And it's a great place to lump promotion of articles on a particular topic, so, and have big discussions. So yeah, I think it's a really positive tool.
Noriaki, do you use social media in Japan? Do you use the same ones we do, Twitter?
Yes, we use such kind of social media. Personally, I use Twitter and Facebook, but I think social media is a very convenient tool, communication tool, but rather dangerous, because sometimes when we tweet something, let's say, well, this paper is very interesting. Some scientists misunderstand, oh, Nature Photonics will publish on that topic. But that's not what we want to say. We just mention our feeling of the quality of the paper. But scientists misunderstand in a way they wish to do. You understand? So when we tweet something, we have to be careful.
And are there any social media platforms in Japan that we don't know about?
Well, do you know the social media line?
Mm-hmm.
So, well, the kind of maybe TikTok or something like that. It's only available in Tokyo, no, in Japan.
And do you use that professionally? Because TikTok for us is quite a social thing, not particularly work-based.
Well, we are asked not to use such kind of social media for communications. Right. Well, officially, we asked to use email.
Yeah. Well, situation in Sweden with social media is very similar to the UK, I would say.
Somebody in the group has asked, Noriaki, do you use WeChat at all?
WeChat, yes, we use, but I don't know how to use it. Sorry.
Is it considered more professional or more personal?
Well, I think it's a very personal thing.
Another question from the group is, if you end up in a situation where there's tension between the journal and the authors, whether somebody's not turning their work in or they're not happy with what you said, how do you diffuse that if you're dealing with somebody from another country through email? Do you have any advice?
Again, well, I can't speak for my whole country, but the way that I've always understood is the best way to be as honest as you can be. The reasons for why you're asking for these things, the benefit to the author. Try and be kind and honest, really. Direct, but kind and honest, yeah.
And is there a point where it becomes too much contact? Do you need to give them space and let them get back to you, or is it okay to nag them every day if they need to turn something in?
I think that depends on the situation of the deadline. So, you know, if there really is a hard deadline, I think it's a case of helping them understand the reason why you are having to nag them every day, and it's for their benefit. So as long as you're telling them the reasons for why you are doing that, I can't see there would be a problem.
Thina or Noriaki, anything?
Oh, I agree with Anita.
Right.
I think that's all the questions from the group. Megan or Phil, if you see any others, let me know. I think we have time maybe for one more question. And give that a minute. Okay, well, if there are no other questions.
Sarah, could I just ask one more thing? Sorry. So going back to the name format, and I think somebody else had asked Noriaki about this earlier, and I think this also comes up in Europe too, because I know in Spain people take two last names from a mother and a father, and we have double-barreled names. So here we would expect to use both names if we had what we call a double-barreled, so two last names with a hyphen in between. But we use a hyphen a lot to kind of distinguish it's kind of one name. And in Japan, I'm trying to think that, do you have situations there where you have two separate last names? I know you have it the other way around. And how do we know which one we should use?
You mean middle name?
Yeah, so you may have three now. Yeah. So, but how can we distinguish? Because often in manuscript tracking systems, it's the reverse, isn't it? So it can be quite confusing.
Right. Basically, Japanese doesn't have a middle name, but someone who married with Western countries people, well, they have two family name or two last name. In that case, they combine two names with hyphen.
Ah, okay.
But I think it's very exceptional case.
Yeah, thank you.
Thina, are there any oddities about Swedish names that we wouldn't necessarily recognize?
Well, we might use the little dots. Like we have at the end of the alphabet, O, A, Ö, which is A with the ring, and A with two dots, and O with two dots above. So, but usually, I mean, the dots are not. If you write an email, they're all out. But it could be. Before I was married, my last name was Höök, which was spelled H-O with two dots K, and no one English speaking could pronounce that. So they said hawk or hook or whatever. But
and if we don't know how to pronounce something, is there a polite way to ask how to pronounce it?
Well, just you could guess, or you could consult Google, I guess. You know, you get audio, you could see how to pronounce it.
I think one thing that's quite difficult too in different nationalities is not only name formats, but knowing the gender of somebody. So you can't always tell from some British names, you know, and if you want to use Mr. or Mrs., for instance, that can be quite tricky. And I don't know what the answer is to that, really.
No.
There's one last question real quick. Is there a number of emails after which you can start calling somebody by their name without saying, dear Dr. So-and-so? Could you just say, hi, Anita, or Anita? Is there a certain number where you start feeling comfortable being personal, or would you stay formal the whole time?
For me, hi is fine, and my first name. But as I said, I think as if for an author, for a reviewer, for an editor, we still always use titles, you know, professor, doctor. Generally, I guess if you were a very senior person in a company, a director or a chief executive, then that's very different, isn't it? But yeah, generally it's some kind of respect thing we have for people that work in research and science. So
well, I started to just use the first name if the person that I correspond with uses the first name.
Well,
like say, hi Thina, dear from Bob. Then I use hi Bob.
I don't mind to use family name or last name, but personally, well, I'm obsessed to Japanese culture, so I often use dear professor, blah, blah, dear doctor, blah, blah, instead of last name.
Well, thank you all. We're just about out of time. I'm going to turn it back over to Donna, but I really appreciate you all being here. I've learned stuff. I hope everyone attending has learned things as well. And I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me.